Hello everyone! Welcome to our first chunk of content. Everything I'm covering today is also in the book, and it's much more in-depth in the book, but I know people have multiple learning modalities, so you might like to hear something as well as reading it, and I will tell you in prepping the slides, I reviewed stuff in the book and I'd already forgotten some of it, so like I said, hearing it in multiple formats is helpful. Also, if you have started browsing the course, you will notice that there's a lot of content. I am also taking a summer course, so I understand how overwhelming some of these summer courses are. So, to help you prioritize, please read the book. Read the chapters in the book that are assigned. Pay attention to the schedule, which is posted in Blackboard. Please listen to the lectures. They'll help you cement what we're covering in your brain. Then hit the readings. There are sometimes a lot of readings. I've cut some of them out, I promise, I swear. There's still a lot of readings. If you get overwhelmed or behind, read the abstract, at least. And some of the readings are really short. If it's a 2-pager, just read it. And then browse the examples or videos. Some of the videos are long. Don't watch the whole thing if you don't have time. Try and get the main idea out of the videos, and they're also just to give you examples so that you, when you go to complete some of the assignments, you've seen someone do it, and then you know what to do next. All right, so your first 3 chapters, we have historical perspective, storytelling to children, and the purpose and value. The book is quite thorough. I think the book is good, I promise. Hopefully you've already started reading. I sometimes struggle with textbooks, but I don't think you'll struggle with this one. All right, so there you go. Here's our quick overview of the first 3 chapters. First, what is storytelling? It's the writing and telling of stories. Pretty obvious. There's some debate. There's always debate. You can get all esoteric and debate definitions, but that's what we're going to work with. So the writing and telling of stories. All right, so as an introduction to storytelling, it's obviously an incredibly old craft. It's been around for a long, long time. There's also a newness to storytelling. There's been a resurgence in the past few years. Storytelling communicates feelings and values. It's been a long-time method for communicating beliefs, desires, hopes. It's been a way to teach. Or in the words of John Roos, stories are told to bind the world together. Initially, storytelling, besides like talking to people, was the only form of communication. It has had all the expressive arts rolled together into one. So you had all that mime, gesture, dance, song, everything was rolled into one to be the form of knowledge sharing or sense making to make human connections in early societies. Storytellers became historians, sharing what happened before, genealogists, letting people know how they were connected to each other. They were obviously messengers and, of course, entertainers. They were crucial in early societies. All right, so early storytelling. The first sort of written storytelling record is the Westcar Papyrus from, I'm not sure on the date on it, but between the year 2000 and 1300 BCE. Of course, you guys all know your Greek myths, or I hope if you're in library school you have exposure to Greek myths. Gilgamesh is an early epic tale, and there's a lot of Gilgamesh in some of the Greek myths, or in Homer's tale. And early storytelling with Plato and Aristotle, they were focused on a lot of value teaching to children in their stories. I wanted to include Norse myths. This is a book that I have at my house, the Norse Myths by Dallaire. Also, Native Americans had a strong set of myths or storytelling culture. And in Native American culture, children were supposed to listen. So it taught those listening skills. And in African cultures, children were supposed to listen, but they were also supposed to be learning how to tell stories. So in Europe, and this book is a little bit Eurocentric. I apologize for that. I will try to get a little bit more multicultural a little later on in the class. But storytelling heyday was in the Middle Ages. Bards were the early storytellers, and there was an apprenticeship system. And so if you wanted to become a storyteller, you worked with a master storyteller to learn the craft. It was a revered job or vocation, and they had storytelling competitions, and the best storytellers were honored greatly. I will tell you that Gutenberg sort of spoiled the fun for storytellers. Of course, it wasn't immediate, but after the press was made, stories became more of a printed form. And so you had storytellers continued to do their work, but as more people became literate in the printed page, it fell out of favor. So as printing sort of caused the decline of storytelling, the purpose of stories changed. Stories were no longer told for information and education. Entertainment became foremost. So the phrases spinning a yarn or tale-telling or story reading became more prominent, as it was more about creating the story and the enjoyment of the story and less about sharing exploits of the culture or sharing news or teaching kids or teaching people. I will say that the Grimm brothers created a resurgence for storytelling in the early 1800s, and they created more of an interest in storytelling for children. And one of their countrymen, Friedrich Froebel, a German educator, took a storytelling focus for kindergartners, and I think that has lasted until today, because there's still a focus on literacy, storytelling, that type of thing in the younger grades particularly. Currently, storytelling, particularly in the United States, there's been a resurgence in storytelling in the past 50 years. I think there's an acknowledgement that even when you have new forms of storytelling, like movies or the television or Snapchat stories or anything like that, the old stuff still works well. So you have the National Storytellers League, the National Storytelling Network. There are leagues and competitions. Obviously, this is all tied to literacy, libraries, and librarians. I believe that most of you are in library school. So you know that storytelling is part of our job, whatever format it takes. Strangely, I don't know why Tennessee is a hotbed for storytelling, but some of the new storytelling groups were founded in Tennessee, including the National Storytellers League, and the National Storytelling Network is in Missouri. In the last century or so, focus has been on children. The National Storytellers League is 115 years old and has 17 leagues across 15 states. They also do some junior storytelling leagues, which I think is really cool. It is membership driven and has thousands of members. If you're interested in storytelling, I highly recommend joining. If you're really interested in storytelling, you should take a road trip. I'm considering adding this to my summer trip list. I have to take one kid on college tours, and we're considering touring through Tennessee. I might add this to the list. I'm interested. I've never been to Tennessee, so I haven't been here. This is also the location of the International Storytelling Festival. So if you are interested, go take a look. I'd love to hear back if you've been here. And I have the link to the site on the bottom of the slide. All right, here we go. We're going to name drop. These are some names you should definitely know if you are interested in storytelling and you want to know a little bit of the background, or you want to seem like you're smart about this stuff. So Marie Shedlock wrote The Art of the Storyteller. She was French and English, mostly English. She spent a lot of time telling stories in the U.S. and influenced several people here to start storytelling in public libraries. And so she started the idea of the story hour among a bunch of librarians. Next is Anna Cogswell Tyler. She was the first supervisor to work with children at New York Public Library, NYPL. I'm going to use that acronym from now on. She had wanted to act, but it was not considered proper in her family, and storytelling gave her an outlet for that acting bug. She was one of the first people to really promote Story Hour. You should also know Gudrun Thorne Thompson. She grew up in Norway and promoted storytelling after coming to Chicago. She went to Teachers College in Chicago, moved all over the place, ended up back in Chicago, but was a big promoter of storytelling. So make sure you know that name. Let's see, Mary Gould Davis. She interned under Tyler at New York Public Library and then took over for her. Ruth Sawyer. She is a famous folklorist. She lived in New York City. She was acknowledged for her distinguished contribution to children's literature. So not only did she write about literature, but she wrote many children's books and was a well-known storyteller. Hopefully you recognize this next name. I actually did before I started reading this book. Pura Belpré, Hispanic Children's Literature and Storytelling. There's also a book award named after her for Hispanic children's literature. So hopefully you've seen that book award before. Frances Clark Sayers, she wrote a book that we're all supposed to have, and I don't have it. So I'm learning stuff as I prep this class for you guys too. Summoned by Books. Apparently her essay writing was excellent. She is supposedly very good at inspiring people to teach. She promotes the importance of public libraries and librarianship. So I'll be looking for that book. I'm going to order it on Amazon. And last but not least, Augusta Baker. She focused on stories about Black history and culture. She worked for 37 years, I think, at New York Public Library. And then she came to work at USC. She had I moved here in 97. I moved to Columbia in 1997 and heard of her. And she passed away in 98. So I actually never got to meet her, which is unfortunate. Though I have read several times at the Augusta Baker Storytelling Festival that's held in the spring every year in Columbia. Don't ask me which month. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a really cool storytelling festival, and they get all sorts of kids from Richland One School District in grade 4 to come to the historical homes and listen to stories. And so it allows a lot of people who maybe aren't professional storytellers, but who enjoy storytelling to participate because there are so many kids there to hear the stories. All right, so things to think about as storytellers, and what is our purpose? Lewis Carroll said that storytelling is a love gift. Jean Little said storytelling is an invitation to joy. I think as future librarians in whatever venue you decide to work in, that's a good thought. Those are both good thoughts. An invitation to joy. So storytelling can be our invitation to joy. Most of us like stories. Most kids like stories. Sometimes they don't know they like oral stories. A lot of times they think they don't like stories in books. Most kids, when you say a book is just a written movie, it gets them thinking. That's one of the things I try to sell to my students. Storytelling serves the function of sharing our experience, sharing our humanity. It exposes our feelings and values. I think that's one of the biggest values to storytelling, is that we start sharing that experience. I'm a big crier at movies, and I'm always embarrassed when I'm the only one crying. It merely, like, when other people share the experience and cry too, it makes me feel better. Oh, maybe you feel that way too. It creates a sense of community or commonality. There's a bond with a storyteller if that storyteller is good. If the storyteller is lousy, then you're just irritated, or I am. And it also, a good story creates a bond between the listeners themselves. The best thing for me about storytelling, because I'm always trying to get kids to read, is that it creates the connection between books and reading. In librarianship, it creates that association and that connection. Here's the story I just told you. Here's the book that the story's in, and there are more stories in there. It really does spark interest in reluctant readers, and it ties us to our purpose. We are supposed to be sharing information, and these stories are one source of information. While they may be fiction, they're still sharing that information. And hopefully it helps listeners see reading, not just the storytelling, but the reading as a lifelong source of enjoyment. That's all for this topic, and I will post my next video shortly. All right, thanks.